Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unfiltered, Unqualified.
Say it with gusto.
I did.
Do it again.
Gusto. Unfiltered and Unqualified.
Yeah.
And today is round 2 of sharing and defending, what are they, like,
Unpopular opinions.
unpopular opinions.
Unfiltered opinions.
Great.
Mhm.
All right, let us dive right in. So, people use soap in the shower too much.
That one's totally mine. This is backed by science, y'all. Google it. It's a thing. You use soap way too much. You can use it more sparingly. And often when you use it, you really only need to use it for like pits and groin, and then you're good.
So
Now, she is a very, very clean lady.
I'm of mixed opinions on this because yes, you can. Like that's in the trenches of World War One. Like that's how they washed themselves. Was they had like an inch of water, they used that to shave, then they washed their pits and their groin. That was it. But we're not in the trenches of World War One. I don't think there's enough reasons for me to not use soap when I shower.
I just like smelling nice, dude.
You're literally flushing your money down the drain and killing your microbiome at the same time, but that's okay.
It's not.
You know, people in World War One died because they got legs blown off. Nowadays, we die because we got our legs cut off from diabetes. Like, no.
They also died from disease and trench foot, which probably came because they didn't wash enough.
Yes, thank you, Keaton. Yes,
I mean,
people who do not use soap in the shower get bacterial infections.
That's not what I said. Using too much soap. That's a big difference.
Well, to me, it sounds like you're an advocate for only soap in the pits and groin, which means getting
Normally.
athlete's foot
and hair too, occasional
and
hair.
getting bacterial infections.
actually, I'm going to push back on your hair comment, Joa. I have heard that we wash our hair too much if we wash it daily.
That's something I've also heard.
Yeah, because back in like the early 1900s, there was like the new styles with all the hair gel and slicking everything back and looking all cool. And so then shampoo and conditioner were created to get the product out. And then when the gel fell out of fashion, shampoo companies were going out of business, and they're like, we need to rebrand. Use this every day anyway. And all of a sudden, now we're using it every day.
I feel like there's a trend of not. Well, I feel like now there's a lot more of a health trend of finding out, like, based on your hair type, like how fine or curly or dense your hair is, like determining how often to wash your hair. I only wash my hair once a week. But that was like something I had to build up my hair getting used to because your hair gets more oily depending on how often you wash it.
Well, I am usually an advocate of the hair because I do that like once a week, once every other week.
Your hair? I think your hair needs a little more than that.
I do it every other day.
I do it
Same Tanner, every other day. That
seems to work out.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, I did do a little quick Google search, and the top results on Google are saying that you only want to really be soaping yourself down a max 2 to 3 times a week. So, how often are people doing it? Too much, I think.
What liberal sites did you find this from?
You should only shower for 5 minutes long with warm, not hot water. So
I don't know if that's helping your case, my dear.
Well, I'm just saying that I doubt you're willing to do
my hot
that.
showers.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know where it was on YouTube. I don't know like what news channel it was on, but there was literally a news anchor who was talking about this, and he was literally just picking apart with his partner as they were reporting on it, even though they were supposed to be like touting the story. So it was pretty funny. So I'd recommend you try and find that too, Joseph, because he makes some pretty good points.
I will need to, indeed. Yeah, well, I think it's clear that I have decisively won this topic, and we can probably move on to the next one.
I don't know
Oh,
about
I think
decisively.
that you were outvoted.
I think at best a Pyrrhic victory.
Mhm.
Okay, the next one is not everyone should be allowed to vote.
I think we talked about that one.
Did we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
that's mine, but we
Well,
kind of got into
We
that
talked
last
about
time.
the intelligence test for a public servant.
Mhm.
oh, that is different. Sorry, Caden. Please take it away.
Well, I just don't think everybody should be allowed to vote. I think the ideal of democracy only can be realized when everyone participates, and that doesn't just mean voting. That also means educating yourself on the issues, the policies, and the candidates. Because I think it was with JFK where I think he had like the most, like the first like record turnout from women, and it was because he was handsome. Had nothing to do with any of his policies or procedures. His party, it was he's a good-looking guy. So I'm not going to say like end women's voting because of that, but I think if anyone's going to be able to vote, there's got to be some way to weed out the people who are just going to vote like that.
Have you heard about the hell diver way of voting?
It's also known as the Star Trooper way of voting, but that's a whole nother can of worms.
What is it? You just have to stay alive long enough to vote?
So you just answer a survey, and based on you just answer questions about your political beliefs, and then it assigns a candidate to you based on your beliefs. So then you don't have to worry about a candidate. It's no longer like based on charisma and how good looking people are. It's based on policy.
I love democracy.
And then the
The
Democracy
question
is
is who creates like the categorization in the test, because that could become like a really big political scandal.
I mean, you are right, Caden. I think if you commit certain felonies, you can't vote anymore. All right, I see.
Yeah, that is the case.
Yeah, I don't think felons can vote.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
I mean, maybe
society agrees with you. Just if I understand right, you want to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I don't think it should be as stringent as this, but I think an interesting example would be Starship Troopers, where you can live in the nation or I guess nation would be a good word, but you don't have voting rights. The only people who get full citizenship and voting are people who serve in the military, because it's meant to show like you are willing to sacrifice, you're willing to take risks to protect those freedoms and that nation that you're there for. You have shown that you've shown that you're going to put the good of the nation ahead of your own will.
Tough talk coming from the only man in the military. But
That's why I was a little hesitant to say that, but I mean, I still think that's a really interesting kind of concept for determining who can vote. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice for the good of the nation?
I will not deny that I think that is a nigh guaranteed way to get people more invested in the state and the functionings of the state. If military service was a prerequisite, I think the military people would be pretty invested. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at South Korea and Israel, I mean, they're very, very involved in their legislation and things like that, and they have required military service.
They do have required military service. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like how we hope that people who go on missions are more invested in church service throughout their life.
I have not found that to be true at all.
More than once. More than once, I have really pondered on the pros and cons of some mandatory service. So I will say that my opinion on this, Caden, is depende on your policy, but definitely not inherently opposed.
Well, see, I don't think it needs to be like mandatory service, because one, then you're forcing people to do this, and in the military, like you don't want to be in a foxhole with a person who isn't willing to do what they have to do. If they don't want to be there,
really dangerous.
So the whole premise is you're volunteering for it. If you don't volunteer, cool, you don't get the full benefits of citizenship. If you volunteer, like
Mhm.
there's your benefit once you're done and you're out.
I think you still might have that same issue though of people of worrying about the person next to you because they would just as easily give you away and give your life up in exchange for theirs, right?
Maybe I don't think I'm quite following.
I mean, like you said, like the whole argument is you don't want to be in the foxhole with someone who is not all the way in, right?
Right.
I mean, if people just serve because they want the right to vote, then they could still chicken out and be the same way.
I mean,
That's-
we've got people nowadays who are in just for the benefit or for the pay
Yeah.
or for the training.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, and it still might not last as long if they determine that it's not worth the benefit since they're not devoted to the cause.
Now we're
Hmm.
really sounding like hell divers devoted to the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For democracy.
Well, okay, should we move on to the next one then?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's do World War One is way more important than World War Two.
Yes, that was mine. If you couldn't tell.
I will easily get behind you on this, Tanner.
Yeah, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion between our circle. I just feel like World War II gets so glamorized. Us versus the bad guy. We kill Nazis, you know. But World War One was just like so much more gray area was involved there. And it just like changed the entire world and the next 100 years. So I don't know if it's a super unpopular opinion, but
I think
it's one of mine.
same. I would disagree, only in that I don't think I understand actually what you mean by like more important, because the way I see it, World War One was like the first taste of modern warfare. It's like the old warfare. It's the old way kind of starting to change into that new way. With the mass armies in the chemical warfare and all that, kind of expose everybody to that. And, like that's the first taste of like the horror of war. And then World War II, I feel like the ramifications were much greater than World War One, with setting the
Well, I don't
stage for the
know.
arms race, atomic bombs, and now you've got nuclear warfare. Um, you've got much more controlled and sophisticated biological and psychological warfare. You've got the guerrillas with the SAS. You've got basically the neutering of the Japanese and just the whole screwing over of the Middle East. But I mean, that was also World War One, so I guess
Yeah.
there.
Because 6 empires fell after World War One, and all that stuff.
My personal favorite and to many acclaimed world's greatest historian podcaster, Dan Carlin, makes this claim as well. And I think he mostly justifies it through like macro politics, if I remember right. Basically, yeah, he's like, our modern day situation in the Middle East is a result of World War One. Our like World War Two is a result of World War One.
Mm-hmm.
The World War One started with people riding horses and the French army looking almost identical to Napoleon's army, and then it ended in tanks. Like the beginning, like the beginning and end.
Planes.
So I mean, it's all fun, silly relativeness, because I think one really good point you brought up, Caden, is nukes. Like that is a game changer, incomparable to anything.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty subjective scale, but
I think
I
also
mean-
another thing would be
Taking
just
the left.
like human rights and just like World War II, yes, was awful, but for the most part, it was aimed between soldiers. World War II, you had the concentration camps where you're now seeing like what happens when someone with total power turns that power onto civilians and to certain ethnic groups. And then from that, you kind of get the rise of the human rights and the counterculture and just like World Health Organization, I think really kind of came from that. But I don't know. It seems like I'm alone on this hill.
I think so.
I don't know if you're alone on it. I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Kaden. I don't feel like I've studied World War I or II very much recently, so I don't feel like I can weigh in very much. But I do think it would be very interesting if someone wanted to host a podcast about this topic. Just like comparing the impacts of both wars and just discussing.
Joint podcast, Joe.
We could do the whole podcast listening to Dan Carlin's podcast.
All 16 hours of it.
Yeah, or 24. I don't
Or
know.
whatever it is, yeah.
But it's long.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. Then we could have a better lens for how to answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will look forward to that. Then the next one is, I don't think guys generally need to wash their hands after peeing. Don't worry, I still do every time. It's just that I don't see it as a need. Haha.
Who is this one?
That a Nephi one?
Is that Nephi?
Oh man, he's not here. All right.
All right, Joe, defend it. Defend it.
Gentlemen and lady and gentlemen. Ultimately, when you think it through, there is no doo-doo or poo-poo on your mono at the end of peeing as a man. And so why?
You don't only have bacteria from poop.
I disagree with this, my dear. I'm with you. It's good to wash your hands multiple times a day. Just the other day.
Mhm.
Ta-da! Sorry,
Good.
Nephi. I didn't do a good job.
I think you should wash your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get what he's saying. I don't see the need, but that's my assumption. I guess I've always assumed that washing your hands is even because I mean, hopefully, even when you go poop, you aren't getting poop on your hand, right? You
Yeah.
toilet paper.
Still wash
So
your hands.
I've always kind of assumed that you wash your hands after going to the bathroom, more so just because you want to keep them washed throughout the day.
So
Well, I think it's different a little bit after the bathroom because you are interacting with more bacteria and it might
That's what I'm saying. In theory,
might
you
get
are,
on.
right?
Well, you're not touching.
If you're good at it.
so there,
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, but you're still wiping yourself and you're touching the toilet, which has
Which is way
bacteria.
cleaner than your phone.
Maybe. And I don't know. We know that you get ill from those kinds of bacteria in particular. So it's
If
really
someone
important
pays
to
me
wash
$50,
hands.
I'll go lick the seat right now.
Mm-mm.
no. I'm standing against this because there's a MythBusters episode where they did a test where they made like they made a mock bathroom and put the toilet farther and farther away and then flushed it with basically like a I don't know what kind of dye, but showed up under like a black light. And then they had some toothbrushes set on like the far side of the sink. And no matter how far away they moved the toilet after they flushed it, they found the dye that was inside the toilet on the toothbrushes.
Even if they close the toilet lid.
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
then-
say they gotta close the lid.
They didn't close the lid,
Okay.
but I think that goes to show like when you're using the toilet, it even in minuscule amounts, it's getting everywhere. So I would say wash your hands.
You're saying especially those public bathrooms where there are no lids, we're basically walking through a fumigated
gosh.
room of fecal matter.
Yes.
That's not called for.
Gross.
Oh, that's nasty.
Oh, that's funny.
Wow. All right.
Well,
Well,
Sorry, kids,
Sure,
just put the seat down.
Thanks for
Bravo,
the opinion,
Nephi.
Nephi. Yep.
I think you've caused the most pain tonight, Nephi. You aren't even here.
man.
What's the next one, lad?
Okay, next one. All right. Where did that one go? Okay. All right, next one we'll do. Oh, we did that, right?
Yeah, that was mine.
Raw
Eating raw potatoes.
potatoes.
Yummy. Or wait, I don't think that was Nephi's.
Okay, the next one, I'm already worried I will get shot down hard. But I believe that diversity, for diversity's sake, is an important value for society.
Okay. Tell us why.
I shot hard. Huh.
Um, I believe that, like, I know that people will say that just because someone comes from a different racial background or just because they live in a certain area of the country or the world doesn't mean that they have certain beliefs and opinions that are necessarily different from other groups, right? So, like, Joseph might, I feel like maybe you've said this before, that diversity of thought is more important than like racial or ethnic diversity, as far as like representing the ideals or like values of a group. But like I
I
agree
don't
with
recall
that.
saying that,
Okay,
but I
okay.
don't necessarily disagree.
Okay. Well, I
guess-
just think
well-
that even though that may be true, that like all African Americans don't like hold all the same values and they don't have all the same beliefs. I still think that like people in different groups do tend to have different beliefs because they live in a culture and
But different or same beliefs.
um different from other groups and similar within each
Within the
other.
group.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that in order for us to like in any community, in political policy, in like the organization of a company, I think you need the voices of people from different backgrounds, different religions, different racial groups to help understand like what the needs are and how to help like that be a company or a city organization or a country with policy that is useful for everyone. So I believe that we need all those voices working together, and this is why, you know, like there's a lot of pushback about whether
Like
like
DEI.
affirmative action is okay or not, and whether it's a bad thing or a good thing. And to some degree, I think it is a value for us to have people from different groups, backgrounds, and beliefs involved in a company, and like to make it a priority to have that, because otherwise you are not representing the interests of different groups of people. You're only representing the interests of a very like single-minded group because you only have one group.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in the fact that we shouldn't have race, gender, or other things like that be a part of the decision-making process when we're considering that stuff. My thought on that.
I agree.
Yeah,
The opposite of that, Tanner. I'm not sure where you're coming from.
I think your subtle plug was not quite subtle enough.
Wait, what do you mean? Is that not what you're saying?
No.
So the what if?
Oh, so you're saying to hire people based on their race and gender?
I didn't say that. I said I see the value in that.
Okay,
I'm
I see.
saying that yes, like because you can say that like we're not going to consider any racial groups or like personal opinions or beliefs or political ideals when we make our decisions about whatever, but that's not a true statement and it's not possible.
Everyone's got bias.
Yeah, everyone has bias, and so if we just say, oh, we all have the same kind of bias, so we're going to do this thing, well then I don't know, like you're creating something that only fits one very exclusive group of people. And so that's where I see the value in affirmative action, or I see the value in like hiring other people from different groups, because you need to hear from their perspective, how does this affect you? How does this affect this religion? How does this affect the poor, the wealthy, the East Coast, the Midwest, whatever, like, because they will affect people differently.
So
Go ahead, Jason.
oh sorry. So I disagree with your original statement, which was that diversity for diversity's sake is a good thing. Unless I'm misremembering that, but I believe that's what you said. I don't fully disagree with your reasoning. I think diversity isn't inherently a bad thing. Like you said, can bring different viewpoints, different cultures, different beliefs together. but diversity for diversity's sake means passing up, for example, like in a company, because I think that's kind of a lot what your examples were. Like if you bring in someone for diversity's sake, that means you're passing up on more qualified people. And being qualified doesn't, hiring qualified people doesn't mean you're not having diversity. If you've got a qualified Asian, you've got a qualified African American, a qualified white person, and they're all working together, they're all qualified. You've got the diversity, you've got the different belief systems, a different culture, like you've got all that. But if you've got a qualified white person and then an unqualified Asian or unqualified African American person, now you've got diversity, but your team or your workers or whatever position they may hold, they're not nearly as effective. You've got a mixture of ideas, but I guess I would like bring it back to church, like faith without action is dead. Like that's the way I kind of see it, is if your diversity is faith, like cool, you've got the different ideas, you've got the openness, you've got the receptiveness, but you need the action, you need the ability to actually do the job and to accomplish the tasks and to be qualified in the position. So diversity for diversity's sake, I'm going to be strongly against that. Diversity through hiring qualified and competent and ready individuals, be whatever race they or gender or whatever they may be, I'm all down for that. But I'm not. I have to disagree on diversity for diversity.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you said, Caden. I think that the principle that they use in the music industry, like when you audition for like classical concert stuff and all that, they do blind auditions, because a lot of the time, like when a girl walked into the room, they would just like fail the girl and just like pass her by, no matter how qualified she was. But they do blind auditions.
They probably can tell if it's a girl or a guy by how she sounds, if it's a voice. Is this voice?
Well, I'm talking about instruments, like the trumpet. Like that's what they do for those types of instruments. They even put carpet on the floor so they wouldn't be able to tell if someone had heavier footfalls or not. So I think I agree with Caden, because doing like a blind audition like that focuses entirely on their qualifications instead of who they are as a person. And yes, while diversity can be valuable, qualifications, I think, should be first.
So that's an interesting point. Like, if we're talking about like the most prestigious orchestra in a main city, then I would say, of course, like this should be strictly based on merit, regardless of anything else, right? But at what point do you say like, oh, maybe in the high school orchestra we let in a poorer student because otherwise they're never going to learn to play the orchestra? Or you know what I mean? Like at what point do you give opportunity instead of like at a little bit of a risk of losing some quality for the sake of uplifting a group that otherwise doesn't have any place in that space because they haven't had the opportunity for that generationally?
Well, I would say it would, in that scenario, it would depend on, one, are they willing to put in the work to get to the level where they need to be? And are they going to sacrifice to get to that point? Because if you're going to say like, oh, you know, we want this poor person to have an opportunity, and you give them a chair, and well, I mean, let's say like it's, you know, they're cutting people, they've only got so many seats, and they're saying, oh, we're gonna set this person aside so we can bring in this poor person so they can get this opportunity. Well, now this other person who it might have been their entire dream to be in an orchestra, now they don't get the chance. Like, what about what they've sacrificed, what they're going to miss out? Like, you've just gotten rid of someone who has the dream and is qualified for someone who has the dream and isn't qualified. I mean, So if you gotta make cuts, like, and if you want the best orchestra, then I would say you gotta say, all right, you both have the dream. You're what we need. We'd like you the other person to join, but you don't fit the bill. Like, give it a try next year. Get yourself to the standard that we need you to be at, and we'll talk next time. But right now, you don't fit the bill, and I can't take the risk of having a worse orchestra because you've got the dream. That's what your desire is, but you're not at where you should be to help the entire team. This other person is. I want the best orchestra. I'm not going to take the risk on a question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys feel like this topic has been beaten too much, or can I jump in real fast? What are y'all?
Go for it, Joe.
I actually have a kind of a different thought on this. I think that one of the necessary components of diversity having value itself in diversity is the assumption that people's culture or people's experiences and yeah, I guess, yeah, their culture, their ideas, right, their mindset, that's inherently valuable. And I actually don't necessarily believe on that one. I think that some ideas, some ways of life are beneficial just for what I esteem as a beneficial life, as a happy life, and some are not. I just found out, let me fact check. I just found out today that the rate of smoking in Indonesia is 70% of men, and they'll smoke like multiple packs a day. Like, talk about a country's culture. But like the women, it's like only 3% of women smoke, but it's like super hard because you get like secondhand smoking everywhere. That's a culture that I don't find valuable and helpful.
Joseph hates Indonesians. You heard it here first.
Culture to a great degree, because that's only one thing they do.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, take it back. I'm sure there's many. Yeah, you're right. Many parts of the culture. That belief, that practice, that aspect is not a diverse idea that I would want to have in whatever sort of group making policy or facility there would be. So that's my thought behind it, is even if you have diversity, that doesn't mean that diversity is helpful diversity. And then I guess the other thought is that oftentimes diversity and efficiency are competing against each other. And depending on what it is, that's a problem. So,
well, it's most efficient to have a uniform culture and just stick to that. But that's not going to work very well. Like, I think we've had a long time of a uniform majority culture in this country, and so we need a little bit more space for adding in diversity of thought. I don't know.
And I would just say, just depends on what the thought is, whether it's helpful or not.
I mean, to your example about smoking, you might not like, you in your culture, you might not like having an Indonesian person in your group because they like smoking, and that could be a risk.
If I'm on like a health panel and we're talking about
but they probably
smoking in airports, then yeah, I would be distraught.
Well, as a point to that, like, for example, a lot of places in the Middle East, women aren't allowed to be out without a male there.
Chaperone.
At the very,
that's like the world. Like this is like within the United States.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm building to. If someone were to come from, say, like Saudi Arabia, where I just had one of the guys I work with tell me a story where he lived in the UAE for 4 years, and someone almost like walked off with his sister because she went to the bathroom without mail. So if someone like that were to come into the United States and were to get a job at a company where you worked, and either like Brooklyn or someone's sister or someone's mother was also working at that company, they are inherently not going to see you and your contributions in the same way, and they're going to treat you differently. Like I think that's kind of what Joe's getting at, is that's not a good point of diversity, at least according to us and what we hold as Western values. So I kind of think that's what Joe's getting at, is there's good diversity, like, hey, Mexican Day of the Dead, remember your ancestors, like remember your family. Super great. Middle Eastern, more conservative lines where, hey, women are little better than property, not so great.
But the question is, who's deciding which things are great and not great? And that's I think is tricky, but it's somewhat of a concern, because I think it's easy for the dominating culture to just go, this is what we do, this is our way, this is our perspective. If you don't fit that, that's not okay. When it's like, I don't think that, like, who's to say that that culture has the best opinions or the best ways? And I think that's where it's important to be involving other cultural perspectives to see, like, well, maybe there are some other better ways. And we don't know that if we just shut out all the other ideas, because diversity doesn't matter. We're just running our business the way we're running our business.
Well, I think if the majority I think if there is a majority, I think it is their right to decide what's good and what's bad. For example, kind of going back to the examples I had earlier, in the US, I have yet to meet anyone who's had a problem with Day of the Dead. Like everyone I've talked to, everyone I've met, everyone I've listened to or interacted with thinks it's a really cool idea. It's awesome, promotes strong family ties, remembering your heritage. And we see that as good. Whereas kind of on that other end I was getting at with that conservative Middle Eastern view, most people see that as bad. The majority doesn't agree with that. So, and it's the opposite. It'd be the opposite out in the Middle East. Like if you're out there, they're the majority. They say no, women have to, wear certain things, do certain things, and they have to be with certain people. They can't do certain things. That's their majority. Us over here, I would say that's bad. Them, they say that's good. It's their country, their culture, their laws. Like, if I don't want to deal with that, I shouldn't be over there.
Yeah. Like when we went to the Middle East, all the girls in our family had to wear a hijab. Like they were forced to. I think that's wrong. I don't, because it's not their belief and they don't do that. But because they went to a place where that was leading culture, and like Kaden said, the majority believed in it, they were forced to do it.
But you also expressed that you didn't feel like that was right.
I don't think it's right.
You feel like they should have a right to do like their own belief, even amidst a culture that doesn't majorly agree with them.
But we still did it. Just because we didn't like it, we still did it. You didn't
feel like it was right. And that's where, like, I don't necessarily believe that majority rules is a good idea every time.
Oh no, of course not.
I'm not saying the minority rules is a good idea, like all the time either. I don't think it's right to just say, well, whatever the majority says is always the best thing.
I don't think anyone would disagree with you that the majority is right all the time. I think it gets harder if you try to cross over and say that the majority isn't right the majority of the time. I think that's the threshold that is harder to say.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not interested, semi-recently, I watched a fascinating video by Tyler Oliveira. He's just one of those YouTubers who does his own news stories. Basically, his video is called "I Investigated the City That Made Being Gay Illegal," and it's just talking about how there's some very few, very rare, but there's some cities in the U.S. where there's now a majority Muslim population and are becoming pretty homophobic in public policies that they're trying to pass in those cities. So
Interesting.
super not common, right? But we'll just bring it back to an example in the U.S. To just ultimately claim that just because you have a different idea doesn't mean, I think, doesn't mean your idea has inherent value.
I also think it doesn't mean it doesn't have any value.
Well,
Just
I
'cause
mean,
it's
I think another good example in the U.S. would be like the extermination order. Like, we're all
Yeah.
members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was Missouri, right? I'm not mixing up. Yeah, sweet. It was Missouri. When our church was getting started, they said, "Hey, we don't like you guys. We don't like your beliefs. We don't like you guys moving into our state and voting the way you're voting. It's now not considered a crime to kill all of you for any reason." The majority said that. It wasn't right. At least I would hope everybody would agree it wasn't right.
And by the way, that order was rolled back in 1976. So
Yeah, they were
they
so
didn't
quick about that.
So yeah, you're totally right. The majority doesn't always make the right decision, but I think when the minority comes in and says, "Hey, this is how we do things. We're gonna make you do things our ways." I think that's asking for trouble. I think that just breeds divisiveness and mistrust and anger, and leads to not good things.
That's
But
an interesting. Oh, that's a. No, you finish your thought. Sorry, kid.
I was just going to say, but we live in a country where the minority, so long as they don't impose their way of living and their laws on the majority, they're free to live pretty much however they want, short of, threatening or thrusting harm on another person. Like, short of that, they can pretty much believe and do however they want.
Mhm.
It's an interesting distinction I haven't thought of before. That, yeah, we don't want. I guess essentially, to summarize, if I understand right, you don't want the majority telling the minority how they want to live, and this is all very loose, right? Because obviously, we do want to do that and do that all the time, like criminals. No, we don't want
Did you
to.
mean to say majority telling minority or minority telling majority?
I'm going to say both. I meant the first way, that we don't want the majority telling the minority how to live, right? And then, yeah, we don't want. I don't know. In my mind, it feels like an especially egregious crime to have the minority tell the majority how to live. Assuming, I mean, I guess it really all comes down to, though, like, whether you agree or not if it's right, right? Because if you agree that it's wrong to have an extermination order, then it's like, oh yeah, totally get behind that. But then if you disagree, so
yeah, I
I
think
would
it
just
comes down to what each person thinks is right and wrong, and the general consensus between people about that.
it's just the nature of living in a society. That's why you want to you want to have the popular opinions so you can be part of the power group, or figure out how to protect yourself really well. Huh? Maybe move. It's not good to not good. It is very empowering to be part of the majority. Yeah, wherever you live, whatever is going on. Yeah, totally agree.
But like Brooklyn said, it's not always right.
Yeah, like these cities, that city, it might not have even been cities, it might have just been one city in the video. If it's only 14 minutes, I thought it's very fascinating. But yeah, it was just, if I remember right, it was just a town where it was getting pretty homophobic, and it's fascinating and sad.
Well, do you guys want to do one more?
This was a hardcore one, my dear.
Yes.
You unleashed Pandora's box on that one.
I'm done to do a few more. I got time.
Yep.
A few more. Okay, let's get another one. Alrighty. Okay, next one is I do not think that anger is ever a good thing.
To summarize this hot topic one, in the Bible, whenever it talks about like righteous indignation, righteous anger, or like God's anger, I don't have the receipts. I should have pulled up the receipts, but trust me, bro. Basically,
I
to
saw
read
it in a dream.
Yeah. Both like biblical scholarship and church leaders have like made statements and shown how these are like it's incorrect to read this as and God was angry. It's like more correct to read it. I don't remember for sure, but I think it might be like more correct to read it as like jealous or precious. I don't remember. I don't remember the correct interpretation, but it's like kind of a beautiful one instead. But basically, I think that when someone is angry, they just are not in a good headspace to make a decision, like ever. I think it's pretty proportional. That the more angry you are, the worse decisions you're going to make, and so it's just.
So let me give you a situation. Let's say that someone kidnaps Aslan tonight. Would you be angry at them? And is that bad to be angry at an unrighteous action against you personally?
I could totally see myself having anger towards this person, and I don't think it's going to help me at all. Like, I don't know what sort of strategy I would think of to try and get her back, where I'd start searching what like police who had contact. I think probably proportionally to how angry I am, I'd be making worse decisions and trying to get her back. I think that the more level-headed you can be in a crisis, the better decisions you're going to make. And I say that the first thing I said is that I think I probably will be feeling anger, right? It is probably one of, if not the most universal human emotion. So I don't mean to just trash on everyone and say, y'all suck. I just mean to say that I perceive that it's culturally acceptable to be angry in many different circumstances. And I fail to see the benefit. I think that you can feel powerful, or you can feel justified, or you can feel so right, but I don't think that's gonna help you either like move on with your life, to create a solution, to fill in the blank. Lay it on, Caden. What are you thinking?
I think I'm with Tanner, just from what I'm inferring, how where he stands from his question. I don't think, like, is the ideal to never be angry even when awful stuff happens? Yes. However, I don't think anger in and of itself is a bad thing. I think it's a driver more. It's a driver like any other emotion. And I don't think being angry inherently means that you're making bad decisions. I think when you get to the point where like you're seeing red, you can't think. I don't think that's just anger. I think that's like I would say that's stronger than just like being angry at someone. But I think you can be angry and still be level-headed and make decisions. If you're angry at someone, but you ignore that emotion and think about how you're going to act and react to this person, that doesn't mean you're not angry. It just means that you have an emotion that's driving you to do certain things. Like you want to go out and if I'm going to get back at someone, then just because I'm angry doesn't mean I can't plan out how I'm going to get back at them. Then that's not necessarily a good thing. You shouldn't be getting back at people, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to feel angry, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with you that you can make bad decisions. I don't think it's wrong to be angry.
Maybe define wrong for me. What is that meaning for you?
I guess like a sin. That's what I'm thinking in like a godly context.
Because I would say Jesus casting the merchants out of the temple, I would say he was angry.
That was
Like, sad.
righteous anger.
Yes, I do think there's a difference between just like natural man anger and righteous anger.
Maybe. I guess I find it funny that your opening statement was that you would say that anger is not the ideal. And that's where I guess I was wondering, what are you meaning by, is it
That
wrong?
was,
Because my
yes,
I
I,
guess
I should have clarified,
I-
and I don't think I was using the right definition, but I would go with what Tanner was saying. When I said anger isn't ideal, natural man anger isn't ideal. Like, being angry at sin, I think is okay. Being angry at someone because they insulted you and for unworthy reasons, not so great. Not a
I
good
have
reason.
a scripture directly from the mouth of Christ that supports Caden's point. In Matthew 5:22, it says, "But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment."
That's such a sticky scripture, though.
But
Everyone
without
feels
a
like
cause is the thing. He didn't say anger's bad. He said if you're doing it without a cause, then that's where it's bad.
It's like how we're told, judge not, but it would be better taught as like have righteous judgments. Like, as this person, like if someone's doing bad things, like you should still see them as a child of God. You're not going to make any eternal judgments about them, but you're going to say, you know what, this person's a bad influence on me. I'm going to stay away from them. That's a judgment. I think that's a righteous judgment to make. In the same way, righteous anger.
well, a proposal. We're getting a little sticky potentially, because I think maybe we aren't necessarily all working on the same definitions. My proposal is that if anger is not the ideal, if it's not helpful, if the situation minus anger would be better, my proposal is that we should try to drop the anger. At least I don't remember my exact wording on the prompt. If you could, if we pull it up again, if I remember right, my proposal, my thought process is that
says,
okay,
I do not think that anger is ever a good thing.
And maybe a better word instead of good is helpful or justifiable thing, and that it's like, guys, it's not helping the situation. In fact, to quote Lynn G. Robbins at a 70, he said that others don't make us angry. There is no force involved. Becoming angry is a conscientious choice, a decision. Therefore, we can make the choice not to become angry. We choose. That's kind of his whole on another section. We have there's a Joseph Smith translation of Ephesians 4:26, and he says, Paul asks the question, can ye be angry and not sin? The Lord is very clear on this issue. He that hath the spirit of contention is not of me, but is of the devil, who is the father of contention. And he stirreth up the hearts of men to contend one with another. Behold, this is not my doctrine, to stir up the hearts of men with anger, one against another. But this is my doctrine, that such things should be done away. He has a couple other, I basically have like his whole talk highlighted, different quotes, whatnot. But it is a little sticky, right? The definitions and like each of those circumstances, but to try and combine all the definitions, all the thoughts, I would agree with you, Caden, that I just don't think, take any situation and add anger, and I think that is less than the ideal. I think that, but by saying, if I'm understanding right, when you say like not a sin, I think I would interpret it as, I think you're right, that it is a super common, super easy thing to do, and God has some serious patience when it comes to anger, because we are really like biologically wired to feel that emotion a lot. But if you define sin as an action that you do, right, sin or transgression as something less than ideal, as just something that needs to change, because that's what repentance is, right? Just change. If anger is something that would be better to be done without, that's my proposal. But as far as I know, if you guys have more specific scenarios you want to try to propose, I have not thought or found a specific scenario where I think it'd be better because of anger.
I've got one.
After you're done, Caden, I've got a quote from an apostle.
Shoot.
That's funny because I also do as well.
Okay.
So mine is from, gosh dang, who actually gave this talk? It says name withheld. I've never seen that before.
Is it be slow to anger?
It says what?
No, it is compassion for those who struggle. Apparently, I don't know who actually gave this talk, but it's on the church website. But they're quoting President Ezra Taft Benson. He says, "I have in my heart a love for all of God's children. I have no ill feeling towards any human being. With you, I hate sin, but I love the sinner. We all have need to repent." So I think, Joseph, I think righteous anger is, because when you feel hate, I think hate is a mixture of disgust and anger. I think you can fight me on that, but I think that's a fair description of hate. I think righteous anger is hating sin. So as an example, in the scenario, don't be mad at me, but this is going to be kind of a disgusting scenario. If you
Oh, don't worry.
found,
I'm going to choose to be mad at you. I'm going to choose to be angry right now.
well, that's unrighteous anger, so you should repent. If you walked into your child's room and they were viewing pornography, I think it would be righteous anger to be angry. 1, that pornography exists. 2, that it's so readily available. 3, that it's in your home. 4, that it's your child is being subjected to it. I think it's righteous anger to be angry and have that anger and that disgust, that hate for the sin. And I think that righteous anger is going to drive you to create safeguards for your home and for your children to protect you from those sins.
I won't disagree that those emotions could lead you to have those safeguards, but I would question whether that is still the ideal or best response.
Okay.
I think that assuming you have those feelings when you walk into your child's room, I think that's opening the door to having a very emotional, harsh, potentially loud, frightening reaction, which I think is a less than ideal, difficult, painful way for the child, but like for that experience.
I think that's going to be more on you than anything else. Like, that's a question of, do you have the self-discipline control to be kind and compassionate, caring, and forgiving to your child, while still saying this thing is evil. If I could destroy it, I would.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
You've got to be able to separate.
Here's a quote that goes right along with it.
Are you guys?
Maybe we have different definitions of anger again then, because I think that taking away the emotional reaction is taking away the anger part. Like, you can still have the disgust for sin, but I would.
So you're saying you could still be feeling anger, but you're not.
You can still be feeling
anger.
disgust,
But you're controlling it.
Anger. Can you feel anger? Because you're still going to be feeling it.
I think that anger is like most emotions, they are something that like appear, like I think most emotions like occur, and then it's always a choice of, but well, with anger in particular, you have the choice to let it go or fester on it, or let it really come out in your actions.
So you are
And
saying
so we're getting
you
pretty
can feel
technical.
anger, but you can't express anger.
But you don't want to act on it.
You will feel anger, and I think that the more you let it go and don't act on it, the less anger you will feel. Just how, I don't know, the more you try to live a happy life, all that positive psychology goodness, like, it does lead towards more positive thinking and a happier life. It is a process, but
I think
I've
my
been,
quote supports what everyone is saying so far.
I've been shutting you down from your quote for too long. Take it
All
away.
good, all good. So it says, as with most all strong emotions, anger is manifest in both righteousness and in unrighteousness. Righteous anger is an attribute of deity, whose anger is everlastingly kindled against wickedness. So I think we've agreed on that point already. To lose our temper, to explode, to become ugly, punitive, and hateful when faced with frustrations is inexcusable. Why is it inexcusable? Simply because the power has been given to us to control and overcome such tendencies. So I think that supports pretty much what everyone's been saying.
I think that's a example of two different definitions being used right there. Basically, I would say the definition of righteous anger is disdain, disgust.
But it doesn't
Or-
say righteous disdain or disgust. It's righteous anger.
Yes, and I think that for the vast majority of use cases of the word anger in the connotative definition that we use most of the time, I think it's not that. That does happen, and I think in scriptures we see it called that. I think in today's vocab we would probably just use the word, hate the sin, love the sinner. I think we use the word hate instead of righteous anger most of the time now, and I think that in most the time now, whenever the word anger is used, it's referring more towards the emotional explosion kind of track. But it's a hard take, I guess you'd say, because it's like we're trying to dance with definitions going on, right? Like in the different scriptures and the different conference quotes and in our modern day use. So it's a bit of a ballerina dance, but so I'll definitely give you, I say all the time, I will tell you, I will agree with you every time that hating the sin, feeling righteous anger towards the sin, great, love it. Pretty much any other use case you can think of the word anger, probably not a good thing.
All right, well, we'll take Tanner's quote as a good blending of thought here. And let's see what we have next. Where were we? Oh, this one. Okay. Other countries should be able to determine the fate of troublesome regions.
So
Ooh.
that was mine.
What
And
a spicy one.
it
Does this
is.
particularly have Palestine and Israel in mind, or in general?
Among
Yeah,
others.
expound on it.
Okay. So here's my idea, or the thought behind it. There is nothing so I've been to the Middle East. I've been there, I've seen the people. Tanner, you've been there, you've seen the people in the places. There's not much of worth there beyond one oil into the people. As far as I could see and as far as I could tell.
I would push back on that. I think there is incredible historical value in archaeology and in the records that are there. I think there's incredible value.
And see,
that as
that's
Tanner, are you saying
I
that
would agree
people
with you
that
there.
made all things died thousands of years ago? Not cool, man. They're still cool people.
But I think despite the oil, the people, the natural resources, as few as they are, the people and the history, places like the Middle East, Yemen, which is also kind of the Middle East, Palestine, Israel, which is also kind of the Middle East. You kind of seeing a point here. For basically since World War I, World War II, have, I would say, outside of like Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia, have done probably the worst things to the most people, and the rest of the world just seems to be like, all right, it's like it's a spanking or a timeout when it should be, no, I'm going to go get the belt. And as soon as, like, for example, when the U.S. was in the Middle East and fighting Taliban, every time we beat the Taliban would pick up and run to Pakistan, where we're like, okay, we don't have permission to go there. We can't deal with these people. And they come back and just keep doing the same thing after recruiting, building their stuff up. So the thought process was the rest of the world should be able to say these people or these groups or this region is a threat to world safety and world stability. Borders be darned. We're going to international group, not headed or by one specific nation. That way, it's not like, oh, I'm going to use this as a stick or be a bully. Internationally, we should all be able to come together and say, all right, borders be darned. We're going to go after this group and we're going to get a solution one way or another. Get the people out, get the innocents out as best you can, but this is going to be solved one way or another. No one's running away from this, wherever they go.
I do think that's a slippery slope, because what's to say that China could just be like, we're just going to take out Trump. You have to just do it because we've got these accords. I don't know.
Well, see, that's where the international thing
like
comes apart. You would have to get Europe. You'd have to get Asia. You'd have to get whatever governments are in power in Africa. It wouldn't be able to be one nation saying this. It would have to be like a significant portion of the UN, basically pretty much everybody except for the nation in question. Because at that point, I'm like, you have not proven that you can function on a civilized level where you can take care of yourself, where you don't pose a threat to the rest of the world. You can't be trusted with governing yourself.
I think I'd propose that you actually are describing the current world order, Caden. I guess if I were to pick out some buzzwords, I guess, to summarize, I felt like you basically said, if the problem gets, basically just have it be the standard that if the problem gets bad enough, then the big boys are coming into town and gonna set things straight.
Yes, but I think you're underestimating the scope that I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting go in, secure an area, and get all the people out, put them in a camp of some sort while you vet them, and then move them out of the area. They can come back later. And then once you've gotten everybody that you can be sure is a civilian or innocent, carpet bomb the place.
Oh my gosh.
That's really brutal.
That's what the U.S. did to Japan.
Put them in
without taking the civilians out.
Yeah, we didn't take the civilians out, and they went from, we're going to arm every citizen, we're going to kill ourselves if we don't kill every last one of you, women, children, everyone's going to fight you to the death. They went from that to here's cutesy anime and fun Pokemon.
I mean, I guess I don't know if I necessarily would disagree that that's not the way things are right now still, because I mean, Israel is going door to door through Gaza and trying to vet people, find Hamas,
Well, here's the thing. Here's where I would differentiate what they're doing from what I'm suggesting. They're one nation. They've got some support, from like the U.S. and marginal support from Europe, from the West, but it's still just one nation doing it. They're not moving the people out of Gaza once they vet and make sure that they're not Hamas. So that's why you're getting the civilian casualties, because we're not able to evacuate the people. What I'm suggesting in that scenario would be Israel, the U.S., Europe, Russia, and China if they're feeling friendly, and then at least some support in Africa. Because frankly, I'll be honest, I can't think of any like major power in Africa off the top of my head. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And then all of them would be, hey, we're going to secure this border, and then we're going to do a sweep through, grab everyone, and then we're just going to rain bullets on where whoever's left after we get the people out.
I feel like that's tough though, because what if you falsely identify someone? Well,
and in war, they don't do a good job of vetting.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. We can do a good job of vetting. Nobody just does it.
Yeah.
I mean, I am not opposed, assuming there is an enemy who is definitely an enemy, and like we're rallying upon, like rah rah go go. I'm not opposed to making sure the enemy is defeated. I will definitely say that.
And here's the other thing, like we know, as far as the U.S. goes, we know kind of a startling amount about who the actual bad guys are, but we constrain ourselves, so we're not dealing with civilian casualties or taking them out in the wrong place at the wrong time, or political instability. I'm suggesting go and get everybody except for those people out, and then no more ROEs. You do what you gotta do. You get rid of them.
I feel like if it were to play out the way that you're suggesting, Caden, I think it is a good idea in concept, but the way that it likely would actually play out would be kind of like the world turning into two major teams fighting against each other, which is kind of like what World War II was. And because like it sounds clean and easy to say, hey, can't we all agree that this country is a problem? But like, because of all the individual ties, economic and military support and all these things, like every country has different reasons for wanting to help or work with another country. So I just think that like if we were all like, let's take out Israel, or let's take out whatever, Afghanistan or something, that those countries would like find ways to unite the other countries that want their help for whatever reason. And then it would just turn into this major world battle, becoming really polarized, and it'd be a massive war. And then I think people would realize, well, we can't really sustain this. We need to create more peace.
Well, I think, and I would agree, but with the caveat of, I think it would depend on who it is that people are targeting. For example, you say like, oh, this terrorist group who's beheading people and killing civilians, I think everyone who doesn't agree that that is bad, I think should face serious scrutiny about whether they're actually supporting that group. And if they are, then hey, you're on the watch list, like you're on thin ice. For example, like Hamas killing civilians, if you agree with that, then I'm not saying like you're going to disappear or the entire world's going to come after you, but at the very least, I think there should be international investigations and to everyone who would support a group that does that. And like I know this gets messy really quickly. That's why it's a thought experiment. But I'm saying, hey, it'll be a mess for 10, 20 years, and then I think a lot of the hot spots that just keep being hot spots, no matter what the world does, I think those go away after that.
We just need to bring back the Ottoman Empire.
Yes.
That's what we need to do.
Real solution.
Real solution. Form another empire that also dealt in slaves.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think Turkey would mind.
No, I don't think they would. But yeah, I honestly, I don't think I know enough about world politics to have a good opinion on this.
That's why you're unqualified, Tanner.
I know. For me, I just think it's too much of a slippery slope. And I agree, it would be too difficult to get everyone to agree on one thing.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm filling up for one more.
One more.
Does that sound good?
Okay. I would love to do mine.
Yeah. I know there's one in particular that Tanner wanted to do.
Okay. All right. Which one is that, Tanner?
I think if there are race-based scholarships, there should be white exclusive scholarships as well.
All right. Here we go.
All right. Who wants to start? Because I've got thoughts on this.
Go for it, man.
Okay. I would disagree only because there shouldn't be either. I think there should just be scholarships.
That's what I'm saying.
White-based or race-based. It should just be, hey, do you meet these criteria? Good, here's money.
But that's not how it is right now, is the thing.
That's
And so I'm
not.
saying if there are race-based scholarships, especially because poor white people, because there are poor uneducated white people in the US, there's quite a few of them, they're going to be unfairly looked over because they are white and they're judged based on their appearance rather than their character.
With the premise of there are going to be race-based scholarships, I would agree with you. One, because I'm poor and I'm white and I like money.
I would love a scholarship.
When you say that there should be white-based scholarships, it sounds like you're saying there should be scholarships for impoverished white people. Or are you saying there should just be white-based scholarships for any white person?
Well, my experience has been I go onto the UVU scholarship page, I answer a variety of questions, and there are questions like, are you part of the LGBTQ community? Are you Hispanic? Are you white? Are you black? Are you Asian? And based off of those, you will get different things. And so I've looked at the questions and I've answered differently, whether like if I was in the LGBT community, and there are completely exclusive scholarships if you are black, if you are Latin, or if you're part of the LGBT community. Like, and I think that is entirely unfair.
I think as actually, go ahead.
So you're suggesting there should just be are you white? Here's a scholarship.
I think it goes. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if there are race-based scholarships, then white-based scholarships should be okay. That's all I'm saying.
But you
I-
are
well, I-
saying
I
there
think
should
what Tanner's
be
saying-
like X number of scholarships going specifically to white people, regardless of any other qualification.
If I could rephrase Tanner, I don't think you're saying that. I think basically you're saying that it is not culturally wrong or cultural taboo to set up any sort of scholarship that's exclusive based on race or sexual identity. There's no taboo for doing that in all cases except for white. So if you want to specifically help out left-handed Hispanic people, you are Hispanic, you have lots of Hispanic family, you feel some sort of affinity connection with the Hispanic community, and you're left-handed, so you want to set up a scholarship for left-handed Hispanic people. There's no lashing back on that, is my understanding. I don't know, maybe there actually is. Maybe people will, maybe there is, but if I understand what you're saying. But if you set up a scholarship, say you're white, all your friends are white, all your family's white, that's who you feel connected to, there would be backlash if you had a scholarship for white left-handed people only. And if I understand right, you're saying that's the double standard, that you feel like there should, if you're allowing people to do it at all, then you should allow everyone to be able to do the exclusivity.
Exactly. Yeah. Like my argument is there is an existence of race-based or gender-based scholarships, which has nothing to do with your character and only with your identity. Then there should be the same thing across the board for everyone.
I think that I agree in large degree in the respect of that, let people do what they want with their money. You know, if you're some rich person and you set up a fund, I'm in favor. I think if you can't set requirements of, oh, if you gotta commit this crime and then you're part of the cool club and then you get the scholarship, you know. But whatever outside of like illegal things like that, like hurting people or whatever, I'm typically more libertarian when it comes to letting people spend their money how they want. So if you want to set up a scholarship how you want, I probably would.
You're right. People can do it individually. A lot of these are like state or federal scholarships.
When it comes to government, I'm typically a pretty big proponent of poverty-based. Just whoever's the poorest.
Like, yeah. I love the scholarships that are like, if you're a first-generation college student, then you deserve this scholarship. I'm like, yes, 100%. because they came from a place where their parents didn't get an education, and so they might not come from an economic place of where where their parents could send them to school, and so they might need the money more than someone who does have parents who have been educated in college. And so I love that one because it is economic based, and I just don't like things being based off of identity. It's like the blind audition that we talked about earlier. Like, I don't think it matters about the identity. It matters about the things behind the person and all that other stuff.
The difference with the orchestra example in this case is that, I guess, one thing to say, hey, you want to be this professional, you need to be qualified. But college is a different thing. Like, we want everyone to be able to go to college. We want especially people who have a harder time getting to college to go to college.
Network.
So that they can become a professional.
Sorry, my network just cut out. Could you repeat that?
Okay, so like with the orchestra example, the difference is we want the most qualified professional to get to be the professional. But college is not the same thing, because we want everyone to be able to go to college, especially the people who are less likely to be able to go to college, because college is a way they'll be enabled to become the kind of professional who could be qualified to have that spot in the orchestra, right? So like, we don't want colleges to be, is it frozen again? Okay, we don't want colleges to be overly exclusive. We want colleges to be inclusive. We want more people going to colleges, more different, like people who are unlikely to be able to go. And I think that the purpose of the race-based scholarships is along the same lines of the first generation college scholarship. Like, most people from African American or Hispanic descent, they're less likely to have a history of parents who went to college. So it is kind of the same thing in that case. I don't agree with the idea that LGBTQ
Going off of what's actually true.
What was that?
Tanner, you broke up again.
Sorry. I was just saying that's assuming that that is the case for all African American or Hispanic or all that stuff.
I mean,
instead of going after the actual facts.
It's just a lot more likely. So like, I think they're trying to do a general good thing because it's way more likely. Right? There's
generalizing anything is not a good thing, right?
I think, as an example,
okay.
Here's an example, I think, to kind of illustrate what Tanner's saying. If you take a hood rat from African American community, their parents haven't gone to college, they're poor, and you take a trailer trash kid who's white and parents didn't go to college and is poor, the African American gets a scholarship while the white doesn't, purely because of their race.
Well, the white person's going to get FAFSA. They're both going to get FAFSA.
Yeah, everyone who qualifies for FAFSA based on numbers gets FAFSA. That's not based off of race.
Yeah,
right.
but they're getting money to go to college, so why does it matter?
And the African American gets more money to go to college. So how's that fair?
But potentially, is what they're saying. Because there's more scholarships they can apply for.
Well, I don't think it is perfectly fair, but I do think that I think that our country needs to do something to help groups that have been disadvantaged generationally.
Well, here would be what I would recommend as a solution. One, you make scholarships open to everybody, regardless of race, and then I just because I'm not expert on it, I don't know exactly how, but then you got to reduce the cost of college itself, and make college more accessible to everybody. You need to reduce the amount of classes, just unnecessary classes, for degrees and for certifications, so people aren't just stuck in 4 years when they really only should be in for 2, to get the education they need. Make it cheaper so everybody can afford it easier. make the scholarships open to everybody so everybody can get the money to afford that cheaper college. I don't think you should necessarily, I don't think you should lower the standards like for your education wise to get into college. I still think that should be competitive, but I think the school should offer 2 years to get in to meet those requirements. That way you still got people who can who can graduate college going into college rather than people who go in and then spend all their money on courses that they're not equipped or able to pass. And then I think it goes back to college isn't for everybody and shouldn't be for everybody. I think it's totally fair and is really not talked about enough that people should, one, go into the military to get training and education. They should go and learn trade jobs. They should go and become apprentices. They don't need to go to college. It's not for everybody. It doesn't and shouldn't be for everybody.
Yeah. I think my stance is less about race and it's more about, instead of focusing on race when it comes to scholarships, it should be more about economic background. It should be more about whether you're a first generation student. It should be about other things other than identity. I think that's my argument. Because I'm totally fine to have someone who's like impoverished and college is the only way that they can get themselves into a better place. Then I 100% agree with that. It just shouldn't be based on race.
I thought. Oh,
I was just gonna say I would definitely disagree with having LGBTQ based scholarships because I agree that they face different challenges in life, but I don't think they necessarily face a harder time being a student. And I mean, maybe socially they do. I don't know.
I don't
But,
think
like,
in these days they do.
But I just think, especially when it's like anybody can say that they're any gender that they want to say, I think that is a really dangerous scholarship area to give. And I don't think it makes sense to think that like an LGBTQ person necessarily has less of a chance of getting into college. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're not allowed to discriminate on that anymore. The Supreme Court ruled on it in 2 years ago. Like affirmative action was taken down and all that.
Only 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's when affirmative action was taken down. And so just to clarify, like if more Black or African American people and Hispanic people get scholarships because of their economic background, that is totally fine. I'm totally okay with that. My issue is that it's only like exclusive for those areas and those demographics. Yeah.
And I think a potential, if I understand right, I think a potential concern Brooklyn has is that there's a history of such institutionalized harm that was caused to the Black community, which you would think is something that you can see such an institutionalized harm, and then yeah, you can try to calculate some form of reparation, which the U.S. has done. We've paid reparations lots of times before in our history. I know it's like very, very different in this case because of how many generations it's been. Very different than most times we have paid reparations as a country. But I guess a potential, my potential thought when it comes to that is, I guess I feel like there have been lots of ways that people have been harmed by the state, and I think that finances is the universal link that you can be looked at. Like, I think someone can make the case that policymakers who opened up the country so hardcore to globalization really decimated a lot of communities that depended on manufacturing, and their factories shut down. There's now a lot of ghost towns. A lot of people were out of work, like
I can attest to that in New York. There are ghost towns everywhere because manufacturing left.
You can make that case that was institutionalized harm that hit these people. And I don't know. Also, I mean, you could say us as descendants of Latter-day Saints, who, yeah, where it talks about the execution order and how they moved and moved and moved, lost property multiple times. You know, I guess I definitely agree with Brooklyn that there is serious, documented amounts of pain that was targeted at like different groups that were targeted at Black people. And I guess my claim is that there's just been lots of that in the country. And I think my understanding, the only way to universally try to help everyone is to make it financial based, because that's the only like universal harm. Like I don't know, like courts, you know, in courts, like they don't even, maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is courts don't even take into account sentimental value. Like if someone breaks your vase in your front yard that's been passed through your generation for like 100 years and is like super important to you, and so you like sue them for like damages, my understanding is you can only get like the maximum value of what that vase actually is. So if it's like $100 vase, that's all you're going to get, even if it meant the world to you.
That seems wrong.
That's my understanding. I think you can.
Then anyone could say anything about, you know.
That's the hard part.
I think you can sue for like mental damages. So if you can like get some documented trend showing that you are like psychologically falling apart because this happened, then that's like real harm that happened to you, right? That's my understanding. You can like, if you can show and prove, which is hard, but if you can show and prove mental, emotional, psychological damage happening, you can get more of a payout. But the courts don't recognize sentimental value, and I guess I feel like does that to me it feels like there's a tie over when it comes to trying to do reparations in any degree to any group that has been hurt by the government. I feel like if the claim is I'm worse off because of this harm that's been happened to me, I feel like the only universal, consistent harm we can recognize, track, measure, try to fairly distribute is economics. And I talked for a really long time there. Sorry, y'all. Thanks for listening. But
Good TED
You
Talk.
speak words of wisdom, Joe.
so I want you guys to know I have lots of friends from different ethnic groups that I love, but I am a white person and I'm left-handed, so I'm making a scholarship for left-handed white people.
Let's go.
But holy cow!
Canada's dream has been realized.
I'm not left-handed, but you know.
When I'm rich and famous someday, and that video gets like dug up on the internet and found, and they clip it and they show that, oh man, I'm gonna lose my house. But it was worth it, I guess. Brooklyn's time. Don't worry, love. If there's anything I hope the takeaway is I would set up a scholarship for poor people or left-handed people. Probably just poor
You
people.
didn't do poor until now.
I wouldn't even.
You said left-handed. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for sharing your thoughts and being civil and being thoughtful and insightful. And this was a very good session of discussion.
A lot of unfiltered.
Mm-hmm.
And unqualified.
And these are our opinions of young, stupid people. So
Yes.
don't take them too seriously.
Yes.
Please don't.
It's for our Chileans. We love you. We love you, kids. Farewell.
All right. And now we will end. Thank you, everyone.